I folded the silk handkerchief 3 times, just like I used to when Lowell had nosebleeds on field trip mornings, precise, practiced, quietly comforting. I placed it beneath the cherry wood frame I'd had made last month. Inside the frame was his favorite poem from when he was 16, back when he still let me read to him during long car rides. Invictus. I still remembered how he used to say it, with more force than rhythm, trying to sound older than he was. The tissue paper crinkled as I tucked it around the gift. One final smoothing of the corners. I wanted it to look deliberate, meaningful. He used to notice the small things, the details. Maybe he still did. I can't wait for tomorrow, I said aloud, mostly to myself, but loud enough for Annabelle to hear as she sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs and drinking apple juice from the tall glass with the green rim. Her fingers stilled, then the glass slipped. It hit the floor in 2 stages, first the thud, then the shatter. Juice spread out in amber veins across the hardwood. She stared at the mess, eyes wide. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she whispered. Her voice wobbled, like the glass. I reached for a towel. Crouching down, "It's all right. Sweet pea. Just startled me is all." Her mouth opened again. She hesitated. "But the wedding was last week." I froze mid-wipe. "No, sweetheart. It's tomorrow. I have the invitation right here." She shook her head gently. "We went last Saturday. Daddy wore his blue tie." I remember. The towel sagged in my hand. For a second, I thought maybe she was confused, mixing up dates like children sometimes do. But there was no uncertainty in her eyes, just a quiet sadness, too grown for someone so small. I stood slowly, knees aching. The tissue-wrapped gift sat where I left it. Edges still perfect, promise still intact. I didn't want to open that drawer, but I had to. The drawer stuck for a moment, like it always did, when the air got too dry. I tugged harder, then slid my hand through old coupons and expired library cards until I found the cream envelope, heavy cardstock, gold leaf edges, faux calligraphy that Melina always used for her brunch invites, trying to seem more elegant than necessary. I opened it carefully, as if the paper might scream. The date Saturday, May 20th, tomorrow. The time was there. The venue, the note at the bottom, "We look forward to celebrating with you." My name printed above in looping letters. It was real. And yet, Annabelle had not lied. That child didn't have the muscle for deception. I saw it in her face when she spoke, shame borrowed from someone older. I sat back down, the paper still in my hands, and stared at the silence. Nothing moved in the room except the slow drip from where the juice had soaked into the crack between floorboards. I pressed the envelope flat against the table and thought of one person who might still make sense of this. Eloise opened her door before I could knock twice. Her silver hair was pinned too loosely, glasses hanging low. She didn't ask questions, just stepped aside and pointed toward the kitchen. She turned the envelope over in her hands the way she used to handle antique hymnals. "Careful, respectful. This is real," she said, tapping the corner of the invitation against the wood. "But that doesn't mean everyone got the same one." My mouth dried. "You think they split the list?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was sharper than any confirmation. I pulled out my phone, opened the hashtag Melina had once bragged about, Greer Wedding Weekend. Photo after photo. The silk tent, the champagne toast, her lace gown, Lowell giving a speech, flanked by Melina's parents. But not me, not in the background, not in reflection, not even in error. They hadn't forgotten me. They had made sure I wasn't there. I closed the phone and slid it face down on the table. Eloise reached across and squeezed my hand, once no comfort. Just clarity. and I suddenly remembered what was sitting in the other drawer back home. The lock hadn't clicked in over a decade, but my fingers still knew the rhythm. Left, right, center. The drawer slid open with a groan. Wood against wood. Slow and unwilling, inside were the things I never needed until now. My marriage certificate faded. The deed to the lake house. Tax returns from the years I worked at both the floral distributor and the town library. And beneath them, a thick folder marked Greer Family Trust. I laid it out on the dining table, cleared the placemats, and opened the first page. My name stared back at me in legal ink. Dated 7 years ago. I remembered the call from Lowell that spring, how his voice trembled when he said, "If you co-sign, we can close by June." He wasn't asking me to help. He was already assuming I would, but I hadn't co-signed. I'd bought the land outright, set up the trust in my name, 80% ownership, let them handle the renovations, choose the backsplash, film the progress for Melina's wellness reels. But the bones, the legal foundation, were mine. I hadn't thought about that detail in years. I didn't set it up to hold over them. I set it up to protect what little I still had. Back when Lowell was 5 and Conrad's car spun out in the rain. I turned down the Boston Fellowship in the same breath I told the hospital. Yes, I'd come get my husband's things. I stayed in Wilmer's Bend. Took whatever shifts came first. My painting supplies went into boxes. My dreams became numbers, grocery budgets, heating bills, medical premiums. But Lowell always had what he needed. School supplies, soccer cleats, retainers, even when the car didn't start or my hands cracked from arranging carnations at 2 a.m. He never noticed lack. At 28, he got the house. My name went on the paperwork, but only mine carried the risk. Last Thanksgiving, Melina hosted a legacy dinner. Her parents gave speeches. I sat at the folding table beside a toddler and someone's nanny, slicing cranberry jelly with a plastic knife. I told myself it was just space, just the way it worked out. But now, looking at the signed trust in my hands, I wasn't so sure. And as I stood up, sliding the folder back into my purse, I knew I wasn't done. Not yet. The porch mat still had the Greer monogram I gave them last Christmas. Now it was worn at the edges, stained with mud, and curling at one corner. I pressed the doorbell once and waited, the folder heavy in my purse but unopened. Melina answered, wearing pearl earrings and the same tight-lipped smile she used at Thanksgiving. "Veralda," she said, "not quite a welcome. I just want to talk." I replied. She stepped aside, more from politeness than warmth. The foyer smelled like citrus cleaner and vanilla candles. Everything was in its place, too clean, too staged. Lowell appeared from the hallway, shirt untucked, face flushed. "Mom." I held up the envelope. "You sent me the wrong invitation." He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just easier, less stress." You know, Melina crossed her arms. "No tension at the wedding. You bring up things, old things, family history. It makes people uncomfortable." I kept my voice steady. "I paid 3 years of your mortgage." She scoffed. "No one made you do that. You offered. You always offer. Then act like we owe you for it." I looked at Lowell. He didn't speak, just shifted his weight, eyes flicking toward the stairs like he might climb out of the moment. I never asked for anything back. I said. Melina's mouth twitched. "Exactly. So why now? Why the surprise I didn't answer?" I didn't need to. The room had already answered for them, chilly and curated, untouched by memory. They wanted my help, not my presence. I gave them one small nod, turned, and stepped back into the air, brisk, brighter. As I pulled my car door shut, I felt the purse bump against my side. The weight of the trust reminding me I hadn't come to argue. I had come to remember who I was. By the time I turned out of their cul-de-sac, the only thing left in me was certainty, and I knew exactly where I needed to go next. The trust documents were thicker than I remembered. Legal language stacked in clauses and subsections, a maze of conditions and contingencies. But there it was, printed clearly on page 3, Veralda Greer. Primary trustee and 80% owner. Not co-signer, not guarantor, owner. I traced the date with my finger 7 years ago. I remembered the meeting at the credit union, the banker's questions, my careful answers. I'd set it up to keep things simple, secure. I didn't expect gratitude. I expected decency. I picked up the phone and dialed Eloise. She answered on the second ring. "Do I still own it?" I asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "You're listed as majority holder. They live there, Veralda, but they don't own a single board." I leaned against the counter, pressing the receiver tighter to my ear. "Then I'd like to freeze the subaccount tied to the maintenance fund." She paused only briefly. "Understood. I'll draft the order and send it for your signature. Thank you." After we hung up, I opened my laptop. The property utilities electric, water, Wi-Fi all linked to my name. I revoked the payment authorizations one by one, quietly, methodically, not to punish, just to remind. Then I pulled out the folder again. Inside was the amendment I'd never filed, one that would remove Lowell's shared access completely. I signed it with a steady hand and slid it into a new envelope. Addressed to the county recorder's office, no rush, just preparedness. That night, I canceled the family Netflix subscription and removed my card from their mobile plan. The systems they'd stopped seeing the invisible scaffolding were mine. They didn't notice because I never made noise, but I had built their ease. Now I was taking it back. The next morning, I walked along the lake trail for the first time in years. The water was low, the path soft underfoot. I breathed in the pine and moss, letting silence hold me not as absence, but as armor. And when I got home, there were already 2 messages waiting. The first post was subtle. A photo of Melina sipping tea, chin tilted, the caption vague. "Nothing stings like betrayal from the ones who claim to love you." I wouldn't have seen it if Eloise hadn't sent the screenshot. Underneath, the comments bloomed concern, loyalty, confusion. Then came another. "There's a special place for elders who twist generosity into control." The hashtags were louder. "Not my family." "Toxic parent." "Healing over history." But the algorithm didn't side with her. Someone asked plainly, "Why wasn't Lowell's mom at the wedding?" Another replied, "Didn't even tag her in one post." Then she built their house. How do you forget that I didn't type a word? I didn't need to. The next morning, a delivery truck rumbled up my gravel drive. A florist stepped out with a bouquet of white tulips and soft green iris. No name on the tag, just a simple card tucked between stems. "You deserved better." Later that day, I got a message from Nadia, one of Lowell's co-workers I'd met at a charity event years ago. "Just wanted you to know people are talking." His boss saw the posts. "They're reassigning the Maddox project." Not a good look. An hour after that, another screenshot arrived, this time from a group chat I was never meant to see. A friend of Melina's forwarded it to me without comment. One bubble read, "They forged a second invite." That's ice cold. I stared at the screen for a long time. My name wasn't in it, but I was everywhere between the lines. The next morning, Melina's follower count dropped by nearly 2,000. One of her brand sponsors quietly deleted their tagged photo with her. She didn't say why. She didn't have to. That same evening, I heard a knock at the door. It was Annabelle, backpack slung over her shoulder, hair in 2 crooked braids. She looked up at me and said softly, Daddy said I could stay with you this weekend. Is that okay? I opened the door without speaking. She dropped her bag and stepped into my arms like it was the most natural thing in the world. And when she settled in for the night, asleep in the room I'd just repainted, I stood in the hallway and knew what came next was no longer just mine to carry. They didn't call. They didn't text. Just showed up. Like the last few weeks hadn't happened. Their car pulled into the drive near sundown. Lowell stepped out first, still wearing his work clothes. Melina followed in a coat too thin for the weather. Sunglasses perched in her hair, though the light had already faded. I was folding linens on the porch. I didn't move to greet them. We've had a rough few weeks, Melina said, voice steady, rehearsed. Lowell nodded quickly. Some rumors are circulating. The wedding stuff, it's affecting my projects. Clients are nervous, Melina added. And the house? Some bills bounced. We're just in a temporary situation. They stood together like they were applying for a loan or forgiveness. Lowell looked at me, eyes softer than they had been in years. We just need a few weeks. The guest room, just until things settle. I didn't respond right away. I stepped inside and returned with a tray, 2 cups of Earl Grey. Still steaming, I poured slowly, handed each one their cup, and sat across from them. You built a wedding without me, I said, keeping my voice calm. But I built your foundation. Lowell looked down at his cup. This home, I continued, only welcomes those who remember that. I reached beside me and pulled out the manila envelope. Thick, sealed, stamped. I handed it to him. He didn't open it right away, just stared at the bold lettering on the front. Notice of termination. 30 days to vacate. Melina's lips parted. You're evicting us, no? I said. I'm revoking permission. The trust you forgot about, the one you benefited from, remembers. They didn't argue. Not then. They sat frozen, the heat from the tea fading between their hands. I gathered the empty tray and walked back inside without looking over my shoulder. The door closed behind me with a soft click, not a slam. The next morning, the porch was quiet again, but the silence felt earned this time. And somewhere in that quiet, I could already hear the fight beginning. 3 days after I handed them the envelope, Lowell filed a formal challenge to the trust. The petition arrived in a padded envelope with a return label from a law office I didn't recognize. In it, he claimed confusion, misunderstanding, that I'd set up the trust with temporary intentions, that I hadn't meant for it to be so rigid, that no one had ever explained the full consequences, but I had. And Eloise had kept everything. She responded within 48 hours. A binder of documentation was delivered to the county clerk's office and a separate digital copy to their attorney. Scanned deeds, signature logs, notarized amendments, time-stamped transfers, every line in good faith, every clause built on intention, not oversight. Her letter to the court was brief and clear. The tone was professional, but I heard the steel beneath it. She didn't argue. She simply closed every door before they could find the handle. There's nothing they can undo, she told me on the phone. You built it properly. They just didn't think you'd remember to protect yourself. I had. 2 days later, Melina posted a video. Her voice trembled just enough. Soft piano music played beneath her words. I loved my mother-in-law, she said, eyes glossy under perfect lighting. But money changes people. I didn't click. Instead, I drove to the credit union and closed our shared expense account. I signed off on full financial separation. No more linked insurance, no more emergency access. I updated my estate executor, removed Lowell as my listed contact, in the blank space. I wrote Eloise's name. The teller asked if I wanted to notify him. I shook my head. That evening, I sat on the porch, a wool blanket across my lap. The air had turned cooler, cleaner, inside. I filed away the documents in the same drawer I once kept Lowell's school permission slips and Annabelle's drawings. And just before bed, I opened the envelope one last time, not to review, but to remember that forgetting is a choice, and I was done choosing to be erased. The call came mid-morning. I was halfway through steeping a pot of chamomile when the phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Mrs. Greer," the voice asked gently. "This is Miss Wellen. I teach Annabelle." I braced myself for something I wasn't ready to hear. "She made a drawing today." The teacher continued, "Said it was your house, called it her safe place." My throat tightened. "She did. Yes. She said she hears birds there in the morning, and that she sleeps better than anywhere else." A pause. "Then I thought you might want to see it." The envelope arrived 2 days later. Crayon trees, a bright blue lake, a crooked porch, a stick figure with gray curls and a wide smile. Above it, in shaky handwriting, me and Grandma at the lake. I sat with it for a long time, the paper soft and a little smudged, corners bent from being carried in a backpack. I didn't cry. I didn't let it pierce. I let it settle. Then I walked to my study, found a spare frame, and hung the drawing above the desk. Not out of nostalgia, but as evidence. Evidence that while the adults debated motives and missteps, a child had chosen truth. That despite everything unraveling, one small person still knew exactly where she was held. The sun shifted across the wall as I stepped back to look at it, light catching on the curls she'd drawn too large, the smile too wide. I didn't correct any of it. That afternoon, I pulled out a fresh notebook and uncapped a pen. The first page was clean, waiting, and I knew how I wanted to begin. 1 year later, my mornings are slower, softer. The kettle hums while the wind threads through the birch trees outside my kitchen window. I wake without urgency. I sleep without noise. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I teach memoir writing at the community center. A small group, 7 women, 1 widower. Some write in whispers, others with fire. All of us carry stories we weren't given permission to speak until now. Annabelle visits every other weekend. She arrives with her sketchpad and a new story, always told with her whole body. We bake cornbread, take long walks near the lake, collect pine cones and small memories. At night, she sleeps in the amber-painted room and whispers, "I love this place." Just before her breath evens out, the mail brought another wedding invitation last week. Lowell's cousin, Corin, the one who always saved me a seat. The card was simple, but the note inside was handwritten. "It wouldn't be the same without you. Aunt V." I smiled when I read it. "But I won't be there. That week. I'll be in Oregon. Boots laced. Camera charged. Chasing waterfalls through trails I've never walked. I've already booked the cabin. I'll send a gift. Something thoughtful and useful. Something I might have given even before I learned to choose myself. When I come home, this house will still be mine legally, emotionally, completely. I planted lavender by the mailbox this spring. It's blooming now. Scent curling into the kitchen through the open screen. The walls hold my breath, my steps, my boundaries, my beginnings. They planned a future without me, so I created a life without them.